Ladies and gentlemen, I think as the gentleman that precedes me invited us to all understand that in fact we are souls. We are souls in what appears to me to be an eternity. And when people say, well, how can you possibly say that? I would say, well, anybody and most women who've had children would agree with me that there is a power that seems to exceed our capacities as individuals. And this power appears to me now, after a long time of criticizing what has gone wrong in this country, as a power for goodness. A power not for revolution, as this gentleman referred to, but a power for evolving ourselves as souls. And a part of what the gentleman referred to, the idea of, first of all, we cannot penetrate the mystic realms until we've passed through death, of course, is one of those things that is meant not only in a practical sense, that is of dying and losing your body and rotting in the grave and coming back, but it also means that we die to what is old and we look up for what is new and what is purposeful in what we do. And so I suggest that in spite of accepting the fact that we are in a de facto police state, I would like to address, as a visiting gentleman for more than 50-odd years studying Canada, as an activist, engaged in most of the activities that were not political but philosophical in form, because I think politics is a low order of thinking, because it's selfish, it's based on ego, and I do believe that the ideal, the one I've been offering as a solution now in the court here even, is a none of the above on the ballot, a very simple option to having elect even well-spoken, great orator politicians, but common people who then, to prove a real evolutionary leap forward in the structure of government, would adopt the forms of the Aboriginal people who were here before us and on whose lands I stand and with whom I have stood for many years against the colonization which they have tolerated. It is high time that we spoke up for a reality on which we have our feet, a reality where we are on Mother Earth, we're under Father Sun, or if you prefer, we're under Mother Sun, we're on our fatherland. It is where we bear our children that becomes our native connection. My children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are born on this soil, and I do believe they have native rights. But before they have native rights, we must have an honorable settlement with the Aboriginal people. And for that I have fought in this country for more than 25 years. And I have seen no result because nobody came back and said, well, what might possibly be honorable? Well, I'll tell you what honorable is when we're no longer slaves. And we're no longer slaves under an oppression, military police state that we have been in for most of the last 50 years that I've been here. And before, if you look into history, it is time now for the common people to raise their voices together from the West Coast to the East Coast and say to the Commissioner of the RCMP, are you an honourable man who serves the purposes of the people, the peaceful people of Canada, or are you just another fraud representing these foreign monetary interests who stole from the people of Canada in 1972 the appropriate use of the Bank of Canada, which was the People's Bank of Canada, which was set up by a man called Grattan McGeer in Vancouver in 1934. Two of the men who were trustees at that time are now still alive. What? And I'll tell you who they are. Well, one I can tell you. The other one still remains secret. I don't know, but I do know people that do know. One of them is Chrétien, and it happened in 1972. I used to blame Trudeau because I was no great friend of his, but I did meet him a couple of times. And I'll tell you what, I know now that the pressure that man was under as Prime Minister and the fact that the RCMP did not stand by him when he said, no, let us not perpetrate this fraud of the Bank of Canada. Let us deal with this now. Let us say no to the mafia. Let us say no to the FLQ. Let us say no to these people, because I am supposed to be, if nothing else, keeping this country together. And when the RCMP turned away, because I happened to be the man that blew the whistle, I went to the RCMP in Ottawa after going to the RCMP in Richmond and after going to the Governor General and saying, if you allow this fraud to happen, you are enslaving the people of Canada, because they were given their freedom in 1934 and you're stealing from them because nobody was afraid. Nobody was afraid enough that they were ready to die for the truth that that Bank Act should be enforced to this day. And any government that does not support that does not understand anything about money. And what you should know about money is the biggest myth that was ever invented to enslave people. And what this gentleman said, we cannot move directly. Boy, I'm foaming at the lips. I'm sorry, I don't usually get that. Excuse me. Anyway, cut a long story short, I think we should take this opportunity while we're apparently speaking to more than one or two people to say to the new commissioner of the RCMP, who according to press reports has now instituted a new division. It's called A Division. Oddly enough, I don't know whether they didn't have one like that before, but they do now. And what he said, in fact, in at least what the press reported, was that this was intended to rout out corruption in Canada. Well, because I think, like the commissioner of the RCMP might try to think, and I think, my God, what have I said? How on earth am I going to do that? Everything in Canada is corrupt. Every secret society, every secret is a corruption by somebody against somebody else. It's taking advantage of somebody. We have to get past the secret thing. We have to get into a common understanding that we're all divine beings. And we're here on an eternal journey. And if we do any good in the time we're here, then my tendency is to believe things can only get better. Thank you for your patience, and I hope it didn't get too wound up there. Thank you. I'm very wound up, by the way. I should be angry, but I look for humor, because humor can sometimes, lead us to a better path. And I thank the gentleman over here, who is a monk. I'm a reverend brother in the Church of the Universe. I was made that because in 1978, I went to the Supreme Court of Canada after growing it publicly in Richmond. Did my own law, got to the Supreme Court, did 3 months in the Islama at Ocala for civil disobedience, and so on. So, I tell you, once you get into this game of struggling against the oppressor, it seems to me there's no way back. If I could, there's a couple of times when I felt like I could escape, but somehow or other, that energy for truth and justice and love keeps coming back. And as long as that comes back, we don't have to take up arms. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you.